Today, we bring you some news. Prince William makes shocking move after King Charles and Camilla's darkest secret is exposed by Harry. Recent charges made by Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, have once again brought the British royal family under great scrutiny from the public and the media. These allegations have also reignited arguments that have been going on for a long time inside the House of Windsor over confidential information, institutional accountability, and personal pain. The Duke of Cambridge has presented a narrative that implicates his father, King Charles Roman III, and his stepmother, Queen Camilla, in what he describes as a deliberate and calculated arrangement that profoundly affected the life and well-being of his late mother, Diana, Princess of Wales. This narrative has been presented through a memoir that has been widely read, interviews with prominent individuals, and several projects that have been undertaken by the public media. These accusations have surfaced while top members of the monarchy, apparently headed by Prince William, the Prince of Wales, have been involved in extensive internal deliberations over the future form of the institution as well as its strategy for dealing with the public. A moment of acute tension and change has been formed as a result of the juxtaposition of profoundly personal historical grievances with high-level institutional planning. This period is defined by the complicated interplay of family dynamics, public expectations, and the demands of modernization. Harry's story revolves around the long-standing relationship that exists between Charles and Camilla. This relationship began at the time when Charles was still married to Diana, and it has been going strong ever since. On the contrary, Harry portrays this not as a typical instance of personal adultery, but rather as a deliberate and organized plan with the intention of concealing and managing the extramarital connection. He recounts a coordinated pattern of action that included Charles, Camilla, and Andrew Parker B.S., who was Camilla's husband at the time. In this pattern of behavior, information was handled, appearances were calibrated, and he argues that financial incentives were used to obtain quiet and collaboration. According to this interpretation, the palace is not only a neutral background to private activities. Rather, it is an operational institution in which the maintenance of a public image may take precedence over other concerns. Those decisions, according to Harry, created an atmosphere in which Diana suffered emotionally and psychologically. He believes that this atmosphere of humiliation and chronic stress contributed to the deterioration of Diana's mental health and to the pressures that ultimately surrounded her death in Paris in 1997. Harry's argument is that such decisions created an environment in which Diana suffered. Intimate family history is intertwined with institutional criticism in this tale. Harry's portrayal of the protection of the monarchy reveals that it came at a human cost that was not recognized for decades. During the same time period, other accounts reported a significant conference of senior royals that took place at Balmoral. This event was frequently referred to as a summit in the media, and its purpose was to outline a strategic vision for a more modernized and streamlined monarchy. Prince William has been generally described as the primary architect of this initiative. He has presented a plan that is designed to recalibrate the roles that are visible to the public, as well as the duties that are performed inside the royal household, in order to better match them with the expectations of the 21st century. The push toward a slimmed-down monarchy is frequently presented as an acceleration of ambitions that have been associated with King Charles for a long time. This is an effort to concentrate official duties among a smaller group of working royals in order to make the institution appear more efficient, more financially accountable, and more directly focused on activities that are related to the succession. In the course of the discussions that took place at Balmoral, a variety of practical and sensitive questions were discussed. These questions included the following: which members of the family should continue to hold official roles, how public funding and resources should be distributed, what criteria should govern who is responsible for performing public duties on behalf of the Crown, and how to manage an institution that serves as a constitutional anchor, a global brand, and a family network all at the same time. These issues are not only those of a management nature. They touch on more profound philosophical problems about the nature of royal service, the link between private identity and public responsibility, and the extent to which practices that date back hundreds of years need to be changed to democratic standards and current demands of openness. It is necessary to strike a balance between constitutional obligation, traditional privilege, and contemporary scrutiny when reaching a decision about who should represent the Crown in public areas and under what financial arrangements. Having a smaller and more focused group of working royals makes sense from a pragmatic standpoint for certain members of the royal family, as well as for many observers from the outside. It is stated that concentrating official activities within a core group is a method to safeguard institutional legitimacy in this day and age when publics are becoming more skeptical of symbolic expenditures and more exacting on information about how public money is spent. This paradigm, on the other hand, runs the danger of displacing an earlier conception of the monarchy as an extended family in which a larger group of individuals participates in ceremonial charity and communal commitments throughout the United Kingdom and the wider Commonwealth. A number of individuals, including Queen Camilla, are apparently included in this category. Not only does this tension reflect a generational divide between those who place a higher value on modernization and efficiency and those who value a broader, more traditional conception of royal duty, but it also reflects an institutional dilemma regarding the best way to preserve the monarchy's relevance, legitimacy, and public affection, while simultaneously navigating fiscal pressures and evolving cultural values. An increased emphasis is being placed on the recent history of the monarchy and Prince Harry's perspective, which is detailed in his book Spare, and has been expanded upon in interviews and public pronouncements, is at the heart of this emphasis. Although Charles continued to be married to Diana, he recalls in significant detail the idea that a concerted attempt was launched to cover the connection between Charles and Camilla, while Charles remained married to Diana. Harry makes the assertion that Andrew Parker B.S. was a party to what he characterizes as a formal agreement that includes financial mechanisms to guarantee collaboration and discretion. According to his interpretation, the concealment was put in place with the purpose of safeguarding the perceived dignity of the future king and diverting the attention of the public away from private problems that may potentially threaten the succession. The inference is rather strong. The prestige of the organization was intentionally emphasized above the well-being of people who operate within its sphere of influence. Within the whole of his book, Harry places a strong emphasis on his mother's keen knowledge of the dynamics at play and the severe emotional effects that they had for her. Diana is seen by him as being bound by an institutional culture that placed reputation and stability above personal well-being. He paints her as feeling lonely, misled, and relentlessly undermined, and as being stuck by this society. Diana is portrayed by Harry as a lady who experienced a marriage that was devoid of love, suffered from significant mental health issues such as an eating disorder and thoughts of suicide, and felt monetarily and emotionally isolated despite her worldwide renown and humanitarian accomplishments. An atmosphere of chronic humiliation was established for Harry as a result of the supposed secret agreement, which enabled Charles's connection to persist with relative impunity. This milor made Diana's problems much more difficult, and left her open to tremendous demands from both the media and the palace. One aspect of Harry's story that stands out as especially noteworthy is his description of a letter that is said to have been written by Diana. This letter is generally known as the Burrell letter after Paul Burrell, Diana's former butler, who was instrumental in publicly revealing it. The letter is reported to have been written in October 1996, which is around 10 months before Diana's death, and it is said to include clear emotions of worry for her life. Harry goes back to the letter's reportedly harsh lines in which Diana is said to have written that the time she was living through is the most dangerous and that she believed her husband was planning an accident in my car, brake failure, and serious head injury in order to make the path clear for him to marry. This document has been the subject of intense public controversy for years. Harry revisits the letter's reportedly harsh lines. During Operation Padet, which was the extensive investigation into conspiracy theories surrounding Diana's murder that was conducted by the Metropolitan Police between the years 2004 and 2006, it was taken into consideration. After conducting a comprehensive investigation into the circumstances surrounding Diana's death, Operation Padet came to the conclusion that her death was the consequence of extremely negligent driving as well as other contributing factors. The investigation also discovered that there was no credible evidence to support a plot to kill Diana. The investigation was chaired by Lord Stevens, who conducted an interview with Prince Charles about the letter. During the interview, Prince Charles indicated that he was ignorant of the letter's existence or its contents. Nevertheless, Harry's choice to foreground the letter in his book reanimates imagery of Diana's continuous fear, an image that operates within Harry's perspective as representative of the duress she faced and the costs involved when individual pain meets with institutional interests. Harry portrays a complicated mix of human desire, calculating ambition, and institutional pressure as he interprets the motives of others who are engaged. He presents Camilla as someone who has had a long-standing desire to fulfill the role of a monarch's companion. This is a goal that needed patience, caution, and a willingness to stay in the background for lengthy periods of time. This is what Harry refers to as a long game of strategic restraint and careful manipulation of public impressions, which will ultimately result in the gradual legitimization of the partnership by the general public. The incentives that Harry proposes for King Charles are those that blend real emotional connection with the unachievable standards of royal expectation. His reading of Charles's choices is that they represent a series of compromises privileging a personal relationship over the well-being of the woman to whom he was married, and that later public relations efforts to normalize Charles and Camilla's partnership were extensions of the same campaign to secure social and institutional acceptance. There is a clear connection between these personal and institutional practices and the physical and psychological trauma that Diana experienced throughout her marriage. According to Harry, he argues that a culture of concealment was responsible for the dynamics of shame and betrayal that contributed to the worsening of her eating problem and other mental health concerns. He blames this on the fact that she was able to hide her condition. He leans on Diana's own public statements as corroboration, most notably her 1995 televised interview with Martin Basher for the BBC Panorama, in which she declared, "Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." That line, which became emblematic of the royal marital crisis, is treated in Harry's narrative as more than a rhetorical flourish. It is a candid confession of a profound emotional reality. According to Harry, the moral stakes of his criticism are amplified when he places Diana's individual suffering within the larger framework of institutional concealment. He contends that the consequences of safeguarding the monarchy's image were not only reputational, but were also terribly human. As a result of the public airing of these complaints, there has been an unavoidable intersection with observable tension within the royal family, most notably between Prince William and Prince Harry. In the modern royal story, the progression of their relationship, which began with an apparent intimacy when they were young and ended with a current separation, has become a central subplot. Their contacts in public, which were formerly commonplace and uncomplicated, are now uncommon and subject to a great deal of scrutiny. Photographs and eyewitness accounts suggested that Harry left the event without engaging meaningfully with William, an image that many people interpreted as confirmation of a ruptured relationship. This was a recent example of the distance that exists between them. They appeared together at the funeral of a senior family figure, which was an occasion that briefly brought the immediate family back together. There are a number of different and intricate origins behind the rift, beginning with Harry's marriage to Meghan Markle and continuing through the couple's decision in 2020 to step back from major royal responsibilities, a move that reshaped their relationship with the institution. They stretch all the way to the series of media productions that followed. The couple's interview with Oprah Winfrey in 2021, the documentary series that was shown on Netflix, and Harry's book that was published in 2023 all contributed to the public airing of complaints and the privatization of family problems. In Harry's opinion, these venues were essential in order to safeguard his mental health and to state his truth in the face of what he sees as persistent hostility from the media and inadequate support from the institutions he was a part of. Harry is seen as having violated long-standing expectations of royal discretion and confidentiality by turning intimate disputes into lucrative public material. According to critics, particularly within prominent segments of the British press and portions of the public, Harry is seen as having monetized his royal connection and family trauma. The function that Prince William plays, on the other hand, is one that is defined by an institutional need to maintain the monarchy. As the heir apparent, he is tasked with the responsibility of safeguarding the reputation of the crown and guaranteeing that the monarchy will continue to receive support. From this vantage point, Harry's public disclosures are not just personal grievances. Rather, they are actions that have the potential to harm the integrity and security of a constitutional institution that is already facing many demands. A broader debate about how a modern monarchy ought to deal with human vulnerability, private pain, and the demands of public office is crystallized as a result of the divergent priorities of brothers. Harry places a greater emphasis on personal truth-telling and individual welfare, whereas William places a greater emphasis on institutional preservation and collective duty. Diana's long impact continues to affect public opinions and define contemporary events. Even beyond the personal familial conflict the family is now experiencing. It has been over 3 decades since she passed away, yet her life story continues to have a profound resonance. Every anniversary of her passing provokes fresh retrospectives, films, dramatizations, and discussions. The tale of Diana has characteristics that make it constantly interesting. These features include a young lady who was thrown into an old institution, a figure who exploited stardom to support humanitarian causes, and a person who both suffered from and expertly managed severe media scrutiny. As a result of her change from a princess who was marginalized by the institution to a public humanitarian figure who has remained active after her divorce, she was endowed with a sort of moral capital that continues to shape the expectations of the royal family and to affect how her sons are evaluated. Diana's conflicted relationship with the media was a paradigmatic example of the duality that characterized her public existence. She was vocal about her disapproval of the invasive conduct of paparazzi, calling it stifling, hazardous, and demeaning. Nevertheless, she was aware of the power that the media has to mold narratives, and she used it through her clandestine collaboration with journalists, particularly the journalist Andrew Morton, who wrote the book Diana, Her True Story. She was able to circumvent the official palace channels and provide an honest account of her experiences to an audience from all over the world. The interview that took place on Panorama in 1995 was a planned and high-stakes use of television to impose control over the public record. It was a move that simultaneously recovered her voice and pushed both the palace and the public to face hard facts. The long-standing narrative of agency versus exploitation that continues to color memories of Diana's life was compounded by the fact that she was both a victim and an agent in media relations. This dichotomy served to solidify Diana's worldwide love. Since then, a number of developments have occurred that have further muddied the narrative of Diana's interactions with the media and the behavior of the media. The Leveson inquiry into press standards was a response to revelations of phone hacking and other intrusive practices that were prevalent throughout the press industry. Subsequent inquiries and reports investigated the role that the BBC played in facilitating the Panorama interview. Both of these investigations have raised ethical questions. In the year 2021, the media landscape in the United Kingdom was subjected to a fresh level of scrutiny when a report came to the conclusion that the interview with Panorama had been obtained by dishonest ways. This resulted in several apologies from various media organizations and intensified discussions over the ethics of journalism. At the same time as these discoveries have contributed to the public's perception of the unfairness that surrounds Diana's treatment, they have also contributed to the present evaluations of responsibility of institutions. In light of the current circumstances, the stature that Diana has achieved as a public figure after her separation and divorce is especially pertinent. She maintained and even expanded a worldwide platform that she utilized to promote humanitarian causes, including campaigns on homelessness landmines and HIV/AIDS awareness. This was the case even after she lost some official powers and the title of Her Royal Highness. Her desire to reach out to those who were stigmatized, such as notably shaking hands with persons who were living with HIV, contributed to the public's impression of the monarchy's social role becoming more humane and contemporary. Because of this resonance that transcended national borders and socioeconomic strata, she was gifted with a moral authority that continues to be relevant. This moral authority is regularly used by contemporary pundits and members of the public in order to judge the actions of current royals and to balance the opposing narratives that are given by her sons for consideration. Responses to Prince Harry's revelations have been all over the place and have been quite divisive. These responses are a reflection of larger social conflicts over privacy, responsibility, and the function of the monarchy. The biography and interviews that Harry has done constitute acts of bravery and the sharing of the truth that is vital for many of his fans. According to their perspective, he places a high priority on his psychological well-being and reveals institutional failings that have caused damage to others. As far as these advocates are concerned, Harry serves as a whistleblower whose revelations have the potential to urge the monarchy to engage in greater self-reflection and reform. This could potentially lead to the establishment of new safeguards for the welfare of those who are associated with the royal family, as well as encourage a cultural shift toward greater candor within an institution that has traditionally been bound to secrecy. The activities of Harry, on the other hand, are seen as treachery by a sizable portion of the British people, as well as by some analysts. These actions have caused reputational harm to the family, as well as to an institution that exists in part to represent continuity and national identity. There are others who believe that Prince Harry has breached a long-standing precedent of royal discretion by monetizing aspects of his private life via book sales, streaming contracts, and paid interviews. They argue that the public airing of complaints in remunerated forms weakens the dignity of the crown, exacerbates familial and institutional conflicts, and risks alienating supporters who want royal family to exemplify stability and restraint. Moreover, they maintain that the royal family should be able to maintain its dignity. Historical historians of the royal family and professionals from institutions are similarly split in the process of putting painful events into the public eye. Harry's disclosures allow a process of analysis and possible change. According to some people, this suggests that Harry's disclosures may have a functional purpose. Transparency is positioned as a necessity for modernization. From this point of view, the reasoning goes that in order to maintain their legitimacy, long-lasting institutions need to acknowledge their history. Other academics are concerned that the extended public airing of the family dispute runs the danger of destroying the symbolic unity and mystery that the monarchy relies on, particularly in situations where younger generations are less connected to hereditary symbols. They warn that frequent bad headlines and interine fights may erode public confidence and accelerate republicanism or demands for drastic change in constitutional structures. This is particularly true in situations where hereditary symbols are less important to younger generations. Some people defend this posture as essential to preserving the dignity and impartiality of the crown, arguing that a culture of discretion prevents private disputes from damaging public confidence. Included within these divergent responses are different attitudes toward the traditional ethos of reserve that the palace has always maintained. This ethos is often captured by the adage, "Never complain, never explain." Some people believe that this attitude is becoming more unsustainable in this day and age when information is flowing at a quick pace and the public is demanding responsibility. For them, the most important challenge is to find a way to reconcile their dedication to institutional dignity with the rising necessity for openness, compassionate treatment of people, and responsiveness to public concerns. This discussion is centered on a number of key topics, including public financing and financial transparency. The monarchy is able to get public finances via several methods, such as the sovereign grant, which is used to support official activities and maintain royal homes. Other resources, on the other hand, come from hereditary estates and private earnings generated by individuals. The public is scrutinizing the distribution of resources in the context of greater demands on public services, which has led to an intensification of debates over costs and value for money situations. The ideas of a slimmed-down monarchy are indicative of a desire among some individuals to match the structure of the royal family with contemporary expectations for budgetary accountability, while yet preserving the constitutional and ceremonial roles that are very important. Not only does the implementation of such changes need the reassignment of tasks, but it also necessitates the solution of the financial consequences for those individuals who would no longer be responsible for official functions, as well as the reconciliation of family connections with the economics of the organization. These discussions are not limited to the territory of the United Kingdom. There is also a significant emphasis placed on the monarchy's status in the international community, notably across the Commonwealth. Whether or not the British monarch continues to serve as head of state or continues to possess lasting symbolic importance, the manner in which the crown adjusts to modern expectations of representation and accountability may have an impact on how people see the legitimacy of the British monarchy. As a reaction to global imperatives, the drive for a monarchy that is more mission-focused and less expensive might be seen as an attempt to create an image of an institution that is fiscally restricted and sensitive to the ideals of the 21st century. However, transnational reforms are fraught with emotional and political dangers because they require the reconfiguration of the public roles of persons whose identities and public persona are intricately intertwined with the cultural fabric of the Commonwealth and the United Kingdom. The royal family has been under increased pressure in recent years to show relevance and profit outside the borders of Britain, as a result of talks that have taken place in numerous Commonwealth nations concerning republicanism and their constitutional links to the monarchy over the years. In the aftermath of these disagreements, the institutions that make up the media have been subjected to a heightened level of supervision. There has been a lot of criticism directed at the aggressive tabloid culture that existed throughout the 1990s. This culture was defined by the constant pursuit of stories about Diana and other royals. Questions about journalistic practices have been at the center of investigations such as the Leveson Inquiry. Renewing discussions about ethics, accountability, and the relationship between public individuals and the press have been triggered by more recent discoveries concerning journalistic practices. These revelations include the controversy that surrounded the interview with Panorama and issues about the acquisition of some documents. The complex connection that Diana had with the media, which involved her being both dependent on and victimized by the attention of the press, continues to be a prominent topic of study when it comes to the intersection of public life and private misery. The unresolved emotional residue of the marriage split that occurred in the 1990s, which is sometimes known as the War of the Whales, continues to throw a long shadow over the discussion over the future of the monarchy. This era of public exposure, conflict, and institutional disgrace continues to cast a long shadow. Due to the testimony of Prince Harry, previously unsolved problems from that period have been reanimated and reframed in current terms with an emphasis placed on the human implications of decisions made by institutions. His story stresses that the human suffering that was inflicted during that period is not only a historical backdrop, but rather a current effect that shapes how his generation perceives the institution and their role within it. The efforts that Prince William is making at the same time to modernize and consolidate the public activities of the monarchy are an example of a proactive endeavor to ensure that the institution will continue to be relevant for future generations. A smaller, more concentrated group of working royals will be simpler to pay and administer, will correspond more clearly with public expectations about responsibility, and may help insulate the core of the monarchy from reputational risk. This is the argument that many who advocate for this idea are using. The implementation of such a vision, on the other hand, is likely to elicit opposition from within the ranks of those individuals who place a high value on the traditional range of family duties and who consider these functions to be a component of the crown's social purpose. The options include transferring tasks, restructuring patronages, and in certain instances redefining who is considered to be a representative of the monarchy who is visible to the public. When it comes to relatives who have been considered an integral part of the national fabric for a long time, every choice always brings up concerns about their position, their dignity, and the practical implications of having unpaid or decreased public duties. On the road that lies ahead, there are many challenging choices to be made. The institution may be exposed to criticisms of privilege and obsolescence if it fails to change, which might result in a decline in public support for the organization. On the other hand, measures that are viewed as being too harsh or insensitive to family bonds may elicit internal resistance as well as public sympathy for people who come under their influence. The link between Diana's ongoing legacy and the public narratives of her boys is especially significant. Her life and death are often used as moral standards with which contemporary activities are evaluated. This is a particularly conspicuous aspect of the relationship. Regarding the monarchy, the issue that has to be answered is whether or not it is able to balance those emotional legacies, which include admitting past wrongs and honoring the human dignity of its members while also seeking changes that are realistic and in line with modern standards. Different possible avenues for transformation differ in terms of their level of ambition and disruption. There are also recommendations that place an emphasis on symbolic improvements such as more openness regarding the distribution of public finances, more transparent standards of behavior, and enhanced welfare and mental health care for individuals who are performing public positions. Additional structural changes are being considered by some individuals. These changes include formalizing which members of the royal family are officially considered to be part of the working monarchy, reevaluating patronages and charitable ties in order to accommodate a smaller official footprint, and establishing an institutional ombudsman or an independent oversight mechanism in order to address concerns regarding welfare and ethics. The adoption of transparent institutional norms that safeguard people without sacrificing constitutional impartiality would be necessary for any substantial transition to occur. This would involve both political will and cultural change inside the home. Silence and deference would be replaced with honesty. Other constitutional monarchies that have undergone modernization processes may also provide valuable insights that might be gleaned from their experiences. The duties of some European monarchies have been rethought. Financial arrangements have been explained, and ceremonial tasks have been altered in order to respect democratic standards while successfully maintaining popular attachment. In addition to demonstrating that reform is feasible, the examples presented here also demonstrate how well calibrated change must be in order to preserve legitimacy and emotional resonance in order to accommodate Britain's one-of-a-kind history and wide links to the Commonwealth changes need to be attentive to symbolic implications that go beyond mere administrative issues. The ability of the House of Windsor to reconcile the reverberations of a tumultuous history with the requirements of the present will, in the end, be the determining factor in the destiny of the Palace of Windsor. Different views of responsibility, truth, and the appropriate balance between private and public accountability are reflected in the tales that Prince Harry and other players within the institution have crafted. The next years will be a test to see whether a monarchy that has been around for centuries can adjust to the changes that society brings about without losing the trust that is the foundation of its continuous existence, not only as historical curiosities, but also as living influences shaping how her sons and their generation choose to lead reform, or in some cases depart from the institution that their family hath long embodied. Princess Diana's voice, her public confessions, and the unresolved issues surrounding her death will likely continue to be at the center of these discussions until the end of time. The way in which the monarchy negotiates these concerns will not only determine how it functions internally, but it will also determine how it is symbolically connected to the public. A combination of measures will be required in order to achieve reconciliation. These measures include explicit standards for transparency and welfare within the royal household, a thoughtful approach to who undertakes public duties and under what financial arrangements, a sensitive engagement with the emotional legacies of the past, and an institutional willingness to adapt both messaging and structure in response to shifting expectations. These measures will include the establishment of consistent welfare protocols for working royals and their families, the enhancement of public explanations of how funds are spent, and the adoption of communication strategies that are more candid and acknowledge past failures while projecting an image of institutional continuity. The success of such a strategy is contingent on the willingness of those within the institution to confront painful histories in an honest manner, as well as their capacity to craft reforms that preserve the constitutional and ceremonial core of the monarchy, while demonstrating empathy and responsibility toward individuals who have been harmed by practices that occurred in the past. The readiness of the general public to accept changes that will inevitably affect the atmosphere of an old institution is another factor that must be considered. However, for some people, the cost of adaptation will be the loss of some characteristics that are romantic or traditional, while for others, the inability to adapt will indicate that they are no longer relevant. When everything is said and done, the future of the monarchy will be contingent upon an awkward but essential balancing act between continuity and change, between the preservation of a symbolic national anchor and the response to democratic demands for openness and compassionate treatment. Reminders that institutions are made up of individuals whose private responsibilities may have public implications are provided by the tales that Harry and others have presented. It is not yet clear if the House of Windsor will be able to resolve these contradictions, which include recognizing personal suffering while yet working towards substantive improvements. Whether or not the monarchy is able to maintain the public confidence that legitimizes it will be determined by the decisions that are taken in the years to come. These decisions will also demonstrate whether or not an institution that is so deeply rooted in tradition can adapt without losing the dignity that many people still assign to it. These decisions will also serve as a signal of how a contemporary constitutional monarchy manages to combine duty and decency, continuity and conscience in an era in which private suffering is often projected onto public stages and in which openness and support are expected as criteria of legitimacy. Thank you for watching the video.